So next week at the Quest Wednesdays, the theme is endings. And I'm curious, Darren. Yeah, what would you like to say about that subject matter?
I think endings for me, I never really used to think about it. I think I was quite unconscious. But recently, as I've kind of become more conscious, I've realized I'm really bad at endings. I think there's an association with sadness, loss, and uncertainty comes to me when there's an ending of something. And the way I kind of realized that I have been feeling this for quite a long time is when I look back in the past, I realized I would prematurely leave things. So if I was invited to a gathering or a party, or I would always leave early before the end, as a way of trying to avoid the end, the distress of ending something. So I think I'm now that I'm conscious around it, because it led to quite a few problems, because I would just slink out of a party or a gathering and not say goodbye or thank you to the guest, the host, what have you. And people got really upset. And so I realized actually it's not a good thing to do. And so these days I recognize when I'm feeling it, and I usually tell people if I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable that something's going to come to an end. So I say it. And I usually allow myself to stay in the discomfort so that I can just see something out to its natural completion rather than cutting it off before it's ended. Because I think people were just confused by my behavior, like, where's Darren gone? Why hasn't he said goodbye, etc. So yeah, there's a load of stuff around endings. I think it's on a deep level, it's tied into the death of my father, if you really go into the psychotherapy of it all. But on surface level, it just means I usually feel this urge to exit quickly. How about you? What thoughts come up for you?
Yeah, I can relate to a number of the things that you were sharing, actually. I've also had a very, I guess, challenging relationship with endings. And when I think of endings, I recognize that there are different types of endings. So there's some endings that I know are coming, and there's some endings that just come out of nowhere. And I think those are the endings that I really, really struggle with, those that come out of nowhere that really hit me. And in those moments, it's sort of like I I'm in this void where there's no beginning, there's no end. I'm just lost. This whole notion of being lost in space. I remember many, many years ago, one of my really close friends actually, I noticed that she had stopped contacting me and I was the one doing all the contacting. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop contacting her to see whether she contacts me. And then she didn't. And then I would contact her. And somewhere in between, I started to recognize that she didn't want to be friends anymore. And I really, really struggled with that and was reaching out constantly, phoning, and eventually I stopped phoning. Um, but that period was so hard because it was like it was a death, actually. It was a death. There was a dying, and I was trying to bypass all the emotions that were associated with that death. And I'm so grateful for the experience now. I mean, this happened, probably about 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And I'm so happy for the experience because what it taught me was that whilst it might feel like a death, it is not a physical death. I'm still alive and I can move through it. So that really helped me. Another type of ending that I used to struggle with was when events come to an end. So you were talking about leaving events. I think for me, things like being on a retreat or to be in an experience where I've really connected with people. One of the things that I used to notice was I'd get home and I'd be really depressed. I'd be really sad and I'd be in this dark place for many, many days. And then what I started to recognize that it was connected with being in this space of deep connection and that being severed. Again, going back to that friendship that ended. And so what I then started to do was when I notice that event is coming to an end, I start to disengage from people, psychologically disengage to make that pain less painful. Now, again, because I know that this thing is coming, I can sort of prepare myself for it psychologically. But at the same time, there are some endings that just come out of nowhere, and I still struggle with that. I do not like endings, but somehow I've learned and I'm learning to be present to all the discomfort that comes up in the process.
Wow, it's so rich what you're saying, and I just want to keep this conversation going for longer. And I realize that with these themes that we do for Quest Wednesdays, it's an opportunity for all the participants to delve in as we've just started to really untangle some of the mysteries and confusions around these issues. So I'm really hoping that anyone that joins us on this Wednesday will be able to do that. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conversation too. I think it's going to be really rich.